UNRWA, UNRWA. It's an agency of the United Nations that was formed following the 1948 war between Israel and its Middle Eastern neighbors in order to look after the Arab refugees who had lost their homes as a result of the fighting. A year after UNRWA was created, the UN established the UNHCR, which is responsible for all other refugees around the world. Wait, hold on. So why did UNRWA continue to exist instead of being integrated into the UNHCR? For the answer, let's take a look at the motivations involved to keep the Palestinian Arab refugee crisis a persistent reality. Normally, aid agencies help refugees become integrated into the country they've escaped to. In the case of the Arab refugees from Israel, the Arab countries refused to absorb the refugees and instead chose to use them as a diplomatic weapon in the struggle against the state of Israel. The thinking went, the more refugees, the less likely reconciliation with the Jewish state. UNRWA is the only refugee agency whose refugee population is actually growing rather than shrinking. While estimates vary, following the ceasefire in early 1949, there are approximately 700,000 Arab Palestinian refugees. Today, there are over 6 million. How can this be? Well, UNRWA has a special definition of who a refugee is. That's different from the UN's definition of all other refugees in the world. In order to be considered a refugee by the UN, you have to prove that you were oppressed in your country of origin and you can't go back there, so you have no country. If you receive citizenship from another country, your refugee status is then nullified. Of course, your refugee status can't be handed down as an inheritance. That's ridiculous. But UNRWA has its own policies. Every Arab who lost their job or home during the War of 1948 is automatically considered a refugee, even if they receive citizenship from another country. And not only that, the refugee status passes down to their children and grandchildren. That means if you were born in Brooklyn, New York, and your grandparents were Palestinian refugees, under UNRWA, you would be universally recognized as a refugee still. UNRWA is a big business, inflated and not proportionate. The High Commissioner for Refugees, which deals with over 16 million refugees around the world, has one employee for every 1,860 refugees. While UNRWA exclusively deals with Palestinian refugees, has one employee for every 166 refugees. And something that's even more troubling is that UNRWA openly admits to employing Hamas members who for a decade have transformed the Gaza Strip into a launching pad of rockets and terror tunnels against Israelis. During Operation Protective Edge in 2014, while defending Israeli citizens from these threats, Israeli intelligence and ground forces uncovered substantial Hamas rockets and weaponry within UNRWA infrastructure. This includes schools. Sadly, it seems that the UN agency supposedly designed for assisting Palestinians has been used in numerous instances to directly endanger them. Today, it is clear that this organization's goal is perpetuating the struggle of Palestinians and not solving it. And there's no logic in sustaining the misery of millions of people. So we need to ask the question, is UNRWA really helping the Palestinians, or is it just keeping them in a perpetual state of victimhood?